Hi, this is Miss Ann from the Newcastle branch of the Pioneer Library System. This series is 7 parts exploring the elements of art. Each program will focus on one element. I'll discuss how artists use that element, show you examples from children's picture book, and guide you through a project to explore that element. Let's get started. Value is the difference between dark and light. Lightest value will give the illusion of light bouncing off of an object. The darkest value creates the illusion of shadow.
Grandfather's Journey by Alan Say.
This illustration shows high value. Look at the contrast between the hat and coat. The white hat really draws your attention to Grandfather's face.
A Ball for Daisy by Chris Rashka.
Much of this book has pale, muted colors in the background, very low value and contrast, symbolizing that Daisy's world focuses on her ball, her owner, and herself.
In Flotsam, notice how David Wiesner has used value to show that the eye of the fish is rounded and probably very smooth and wet.
Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. Sendak uses cross-hatching to create shadows to give three-dimensionality in this book.
So now we know that value is the contrast between light and dark. And we know that artists use value to create the illusion of 3 dimensions in a 2-dimensional work. Using value, we are going to draw a 3-dimensional looking apple. I need a piece of paper, colored pencil, or any colored tool that you want to use, and a pencil. Now, I find it easiest to recognize value working from a photograph. So I've got a photograph of an apple here. I'm going to use it as I try to create an apple that looks 3-dimensional. Don't want it to look flat. So I'm going to start with one side of my apple, and I find that if I try to go all the way around back to the beginning of the line, sometimes I get a pretty lopsided apple. So I'm going to do one side, and then I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to do the other side. That's still pretty lopsided. Now, there is a dent in my apple where the stem comes out. And again, I'm not using straight lines because I want to give the illusion of a rounded shape. So by using a rounded line, I look more like it's rounded. Now, the first thing we've got to do is determine where our light source is. That is, from which side is the light hitting our apple. If this is my light source with the light coming in this way, my highlight or my lightest part of the apple, the place where the light is bouncing off the apple and back into our eye, will be on this side. I'm going to put that in there with yellow. I didn't put that in there as just a straight line. I'm actually trying to mimic the edge of the apple here. I'm doing everything I can to create the illusion of 3 dimensions. And then there's another area here. Light is bouncing back off the back of the dent. And right here, close to the edge of my apple, I have light bouncing off my table and back up to that side of the apple. I've left out my shadow. Let's give this apple a little bit of shadow. And of course, if the light was coming in this way, the shadow would be this way. I'm going to start by filling in the darkest part of my apple. So I am going to color very thickly up the side of my apple here and down into my dent. And my shadow is going to get thicker as I go to the bottom of my apple and thinner up at the top of my apple. It's going to get darker. I'm going to have more value here because there's more shadow at the bottom of my apple. Now I like to color fast and furious, so don't feel like you've got to keep up with me. I've got a nice dark area right here near my dent and a very dark area here where there's no light in my dent. Now I'm going to color lighter. This area here is going to be the lightest area in my apple because that's where the light is bouncing off of it. I will put a little bit of red in the highlight because we still get a little bit of that showing through. Notice I am following the edge of my apple, not doing straight lines around, well, the edge this way, with short strokes to fill in. I need to blend right here much better than it is. So I'm going to come back and do some darker in there. And as I come up my apple, my value is getting lighter and lighter. So play with that. Take a look at an object or a photograph of an object. Notice where the shadows are. Notice where the dark values are. That's the shadow. And notice where the light values are. That's the highlight. So it looks slightly 3D. Of course, I did this very quickly and could spend more time working on it. Let's put a stem on our apple just to be authentic. And of course, this stem is not straight up and down. Very seldom do you see a stem that just sticks straight out of the apple. Let's give it a shadow. Now, shadow is absence of light, so I'm going to use gray. The darkest shadow would be here where the apple and the shadow meet. So even in a shadow, you have value changes. And where you get farther and farther away from the apple, more light penetrates. And so you do have a lighter area in your shadow farther away from your apple. So value, making a two-dimensional object look three-dimensional.